Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for the side event of Partnerships to Harmonize Science, Information and Knowledge at Regional Scales for Enabling Adaptation. We will get started here in just a few minutes. Please note that this session today will be recorded for documentation purposes. My name is Nafisa and I will be your technical facilitator today. So if you have any technical issues, please feel free to message me using the private chat function at the bottom of your Zoom window and direct your message to APN Secretariat. Importantly, please use the Q&A features for your questions, which you will find also at the bottom of your Zoom window. With the Q&A function, you can enter your questions and you can also upvote others' questions by clicking thumbs up button next to any questions that you see in the Q&A window. Please also be sure to add your organization affiliation to your questions so that we can address them properly. Again, let me remind you, you are at the side event of Partnerships to Harmonize Science, Information and Knowledge at Regional Scales for Enabling Adaptation. Thank you very much for your patience. I will now hand over the floor to Dr. Linda Stevenson, Head of Knowledge Management and Scientific Affairs, Deputy Head of Development and Institutional Affairs, APN. The floor is yours now, Linda.
Thank you, Nafisa. That's our Nafisa Ismail, our technical assistant for today. Welcome, everyone. So far, we have 39 participants and most likely counting because the key messages just ended on the Hibolo platform. So everyone who's joined today already, a very warm welcome to you all. My name is Linda Stevenson and I am Division Head for Scientific Affairs, Knowledge Management and Scientific Affairs, and I'm Deputy Head for Development and Institutional Affairs, and I will be co-moderating this session today. I will start the session off and then hand over to my co-moderator. So let me just begin by sharing my screen to offer a proper introduction. Okay, so it's my real great honor to open and introduce our side event today, which is on partnerships to harmonize science, information and knowledge at regional scales and adaptation. This session has been organized by the Asia Pacific Network for Global Change Research in partnership with the Ministry of Environment, Japan, the Asia Pacific Climate Change Information Platform, or AP-PLAT, the International Center for Water Hazard and Risk Management under the auspices of UNESCO, otherwise known as ICHARM, the Secretariat of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, the World Climate Research Program's project CORDEX on coordinating regional climate downscaling experiments, both at the global level and in Southeast Asia through SEACLID, or the Southeast Asia Climate Downscaling Experiment. I would really like to thank our partners in advance and our audience. I think it's growing, and for what we hope will be a really highly interactive session. So, it's no surprise, certainly what we've heard this week, that partnerships are crucial in overcoming barriers to accessing and using knowledge and information. And to date, this really seems to be one of the key messages that we've heard in many of the side sessions and side events being organized so far at the 7th Asia Pacific Climate Change Adaptation Forum, which of course is this side event is part of that forum. In addition to this, there is also a gap between what is needed by users and what is available. And scientific information that is aimed at informing policies really needs to be co-created with relevant stakeholders and specific to the needs of communities. So in this context, this session has at the outset 3 key messages, and I'm just going to show you these now. So the first is scientific knowledge, data, technology, and innovation contributes to building resilience by empowering communities of users and beneficiaries. The second is partnership and mechanisms that promote and bring about data harmonization and uptake should be well linked and reconciled. And the third is information and capacity needs of local communities and other direct users of knowledge and information should be primarily taken into consideration, when localizing impact assessments and adaptation interventions. So through these key messages and through our discussions and our dialogue today, we really hope to achieve 4 outcomes for this session, in that we should, first of all, make use of the existing work and efforts and best practices in generating, synthesizing, and disseminating information related to climate change adaptation. Minimize the gaps, challenges, and leverage on the opportunities in the context of enhancing accessibility and use of climate information to enable synergistic and coordinated adaptation in the Asia-Pacific region. And third, better connect producers, brokers, and users, so for example, practitioners, decision makers, and communities of climate adaptation knowledge and data. And finally, take advantage of the partnerships and mechanisms that promote and bring about climate data information harmonization and uptake. So moving on, who do we have today? It's my absolute pleasure to introduce our speakers and panelists for this event. We have 2 high-level speakers, Mr. Kazuaki Takahashi, who is Director of the Climate Change Adaptation Office at the Global Environment Bureau, Ministry of the Environment, Japan, and Professor Toshio Koike, who is the Executive Director of ICHARM. We also have very important speakers and panelists, from various regional and international organizations, and from left to right, we have Dr. Yuji Masutomi, who is a senior researcher at the Center for Climate Change Adaptation and who is heading the work of AP-PLAT, which we've all heard a lot about this week. And he's based at the National Institute for Environmental Studies, or NIES, in Japan. Dr. Joanna Post is joining us from the Secretariat of the UNFCCC in Bonn, Germany. Excuse me while I just try and grab my mouse. Bear with me. Okay, she's joining us from UNFCCC in Bonn. Dr. Post is the lead for research and systematic observation. And in addition to negotiations, she is optimizing international collaboration in this area. Next is Dr. Irene Lake, who is the director of the International Project Office of WCRP's CORDEX program, and Irene is based at the Swedish Meteorological and Hydrological Institute, of course, in Sweden. And then we have Dr. Fredolin Tangang, who is Professor of Climatology and Oceanography of Earth Sciences and Environment at the National University of Malaysia. Professor Tangang also leads the regional CORDEX domain in Southeast Asia. Let me get my mouse to work. There we go. And last, by no means least, we have our members of the APN Secretariat. You've heard from our Nafisa Ismail, and I do apologize for not having you on the screen. We have our director, Mr. Genichiro Tsukada, who will speak during the session. My co-moderator is next. That's Christmas Uchiyama, who is program officer at the Secretariat. We have Mr. Zhaojun Deng, who will also give a presentation today, and myself. So next up, let's have some audience interaction via Mentimeter. I'm not sure how many people we have yet, Nafisa? Okay, we have over 50 people here. So, but before we join Mentimeter, I would very much like to ask I'm going to stop sharing my screen, apologies. I'm going to ask Mr. Takahashi to actually open the session formally. I do apologize for jumping ahead there, Mr. Takahashi. If you could open the session with your opening remarks. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Linda-san, and good afternoon, good morning, and good evening, everyone. This is Takahashi Kazuaki, Director of Climate Change Adaptation Office and in Ministry of Environment, Japan. I'm delighted that the Asia Pacific Network for Global Change Research, called APN, has organized a side event at this APAN Forum entitled Partnerships to Harmonize Science Information and Knowledge at Regional Scales for Enabling Adaptation with Partners at Regional and International Levels, together with partners from UNFCCC, WCRP-CORDEX, CORDEX-SEACLID, NIES, AP-PLAT, and ICHARM. This event will feature existing work and efforts and best practices in generating, synthesizing, and disseminating information related to climate change adaptation. The event also will look into gaps, challenges, and opportunities, especially in the context of enhancing accessibility and use of climate information to enable synergistic and coordinated adaptation in the Asia Pacific region. As most of you know, the Asia Pacific Climate Change Adaptation Information Platform, called AP-PLAT, was launched in 2019, along with partner countries as well as international organizations. The aim of the platform is to provide an enabling environment for climate risk-informed decision-making and practical adaptation in Asia and Pacific. To achieve this, AP-PLAT has three pillars, namely development of scientific information and knowledge, provision of adaptation tools, and provision of capacity building. Importantly, AP-PLAT also explores practical partnerships and learn among the partner countries and organizations in order to create scientific knowledge and useful tools. Through the collaborative activities with partners, the platform is providing an enabling environment for climate change risk informed decision-making and practical adaptation in action. I believe that today's discussion will contribute to enhancing collaboration further between AP-PLAT and partners too. Finally, it's my hope that this event will be highly interactive and provide information on the importance of data knowledge sharing through harmonizing partnerships. I wish you all the very best for successful event. Thank you very much.
Very much, Mr. Takahashi. It's a real pleasure to have you here, and thank you for your warm and welcome remarks. And as I did, I jumped the gun a little bit. I do apologize, but we are really keen on getting some audience interaction. So before moving on to our keynote speech and panelist interventions, we would like you, the audience, to interact with us. And this screen shows you a little bit about how you can access the interactive program, which is called Mentimeter. I think it's been used quite a lot this week, so I hope that some of the audience is already familiar. If you're joining from your smartphone, then please click the QR code and you'll have direct access to our Mentimeter presentation. If you are joining from your computer, then all you have to do is type in menti.com into your web browser and enter the code 99762590. I'll repeat 99762590, and you will then access our Mentimeter presentation on your PC. Now, just a general tip that we've spotted this week: if you're using your PC and you're using your smartphone, using both really gives you a much better experience. So with that, I will end this slideshow and go straight into Mentimeter. First of all, where are you from? 21 participants have already interacted with Mentimeter. So it seems that Southeast Asia has joined us. At least 10 people have joined us from Southeast Asia, 6 from South Asia, 5 from East Asia, 11 now from Southeast Asia, 2 from Oceania and the Pacific, and 1 other. I wonder who the 1 other is outside the region. So 28 participants have joined us so far. Let's keep going. Any more would like to join in? 28. So it seems that many of our participants are from Southeast Asia. Not surprising, given that Bangkok is the Secretariat for APAN. We now have 30. That's fantastic. So now I'm going to move on to my next. Okay, what type of organization do you represent? Academia, the private sector, government? Are you from the local indigenous community, civil society perhaps? What about youth? You know, youth tends to stay up late in this part of the world. Or not. Academia, we are inundated with academia today. 16 responses so far, 18. Okay, international regional organizations are getting up there. Fantastic to see 3 from the government and 1 from civil society. How about the private sector? No one out there? Okay, 25 responses, 29 responses. Academia is really in here. Oh my goodness. This is a little bit of a surprise to me, actually. 1 from the private sector, fantastic. So we have 31 responses. Maybe I can just hang on and see if any more comes. It looks like perhaps not. So as we have 3 more slides at this introduction stage, let me move forward. Okay, here's a statement. What do you think? Partnerships help effectively harmonizing scientific information and knowledge to enable adaptation. What do you think? Do you strongly agree? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you strongly disagree? Or are you not sure just yet? I think you might be posing this question again at the end of the session. But partnerships help in effectively harmonizing scientific information and knowledge to enable adaptation. And we have an overwhelming strongly agree. So it makes the session, you know, all the more important that we're actually having this session today and discussing partnerships with key players in the climate adaptation arena. Oh, we're up to 35 respondents now. This is great. We must have more people joining our session. This is fantastic. Okay, now here's one for you. And I think, you know, the academia seems to be playing a big part in this session. So what type or format of data, information, and knowledge do you usually use? I can see academia is there. Come on, guys. Maps and data sets, research articles, reports, policy briefs. No one uses policy briefs? That surprises me. Videos, multimedia, social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, others. 27 responses. Okay, the policy briefs are on the increase. Research articles, it just shows you just how important the peer-reviewed research articles are in the world of science, information, and knowledge. And okay, policy briefs, that's interesting. Still at 2. Reports, I wonder what kind of reports, but it's great that maps and data sets are being used, particularly as we will talk a lot about climate downscaling and other related research information. Okay, I'm going to move on. We have 38 respondents. Fantastic. I think this is my last one, number 5. Okay, unfortunately, this is my last one, but current scientific knowledge, another statement, current scientific knowledge, data, technology, and innovation contributes to building resilience. What do you think of that statement? Do you agree with the statement, strongly agree, disagree, strongly disagree, or are you unsure? So it really does seem that scientific knowledge, data and technology, as well as innovation, does contribute to building resilience. And that, I hope, as you'll see throughout the session, will be building resilience all across the board, from the local level, grassroots level, right up to the very top. So strongly agree. 4 disagree. I wonder why, and I wonder if we can change their minds by the end of the session. Who'll know? 37 respondents, maybe one more, and I can then maybe, okay, there you go. We're up to 38. So I think you can continue to contribute to the Mentimeter questions. But for now, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I would like to introduce to you our keynote speaker. We are really honored to have our keynote speaker today. Our keynote speaker is Professor Toshio Koike. And Professor Koike is the Executive Director of the International Center for Water Hazard and Risk Management, or ICHARM, which is under the auspices of UNESCO. Professor Koike is also Professor Emeritus of the University of Tokyo. He's been the chair of the River Council of Japan since 2015, leading discussions on important river-related matters to advise the Minister of Land, Infrastructure, Transport and Tourism in Japan. In his capacity as a council member of the Science Council of Japan under the Cabinet Office, since 2017, he has contributed to addressing various issues through science by making policy and other recommendations to the private and public sectors nationwide. And in 2019, Professor Koike received the International Scientific Cooperation Award from the Chinese Academy of Sciences and the Friendship Award from the Chinese government. That does not surprise me, Professor Koike. And Koike-sensei also received the GEO, or Group on Earth Observations, Individual Excellent Award in 2020. So as I said, it's a real honor to have you here. And just before I let you have the floor, Professor Koike, your inspirational statement is the science community should create consilience knowledge base and cultivate and increase human resources to contribute to river-based disaster resilience and sustainability by all. Professor Koike, it's a real pleasure to have you with us, and the floor is now yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Linda-san. And I also really enjoy the Menti system, and thank you very much. I will just share my screen for supporting. Oh, what this one? This one. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. I'm a hydrologist and also the civil engineer focusing on the river management, flood and drought management. And the climate system affected the water cycle, and the water cycle affected the climate system. So the climate system and the water cycle deeply interact, and then they are co-changing. Therefore, since the 1980, the number of water-related disasters, such as floods, cyclones, droughts, have been increasing very rapidly by more than 3 times. The overall economic losses are also rapidly increasing. One of the critical points of the economic losses due to the climate-related disaster is that the value expressed by percentage of GDP are much larger in the low and lower middle income countries than in the upper middle and high income countries. Furthermore, more than 80% of the human losses occurred in the lower middle and low income countries. In contrast, more than 3/4 of the economic losses are accounted for in the upper middle and high income countries. Disaster risk is one of the elements that hinder the achievement of the SDGs. It is critically important to take action to reduce disaster risk, make effort for economic and social development, and adapt to the changes. Therefore, we need to take concerted action across the Sendai Framework, SDGs, and Paris Agreement. Actually, it is very difficult for science community to cover such a wide discipline comprehensively. We need to a system for synthesizing which can support the exploration, collection, archiving, scientific data and information, and encourage the prediction, simulation, and visualization, data integration, information fusion, and the coordination of the various disciplines. So then the science community could be supported for the activity of consilience, the integration of the knowledge by using this information. Can we share this information with society as one of the key topics of this session? We need to identify some gap between the science community and the society or on-site stakeholder. How to fill, how to reduce the gap. That is our mission. So we need to function to make a bridge between the science community and the society. That is facilitator. Facilitator is not just as a master of ceremony, but as catalytic beings. So which can build a trust-based relationship with the society, which can clarify the problem structure, which can set a goal and suggest a governance structure and a possible solution, and who can make the explanation clearly. So this facilitator should be fostered by the science community, and online synthesis system also can support the facilitator, especially under the COVID-19 by using the e-learning. Then this online synthesis system develop a mutual risk communication, the function between the society and the science community. Then we can fill the gap by sharing the data, information, and knowledge. And then we can get the knowledge or needs from the society, and science community can propose a new framework. So that the integrated knowledge can make society get a fresh learning by integrating this kind of science knowledge. So what I want to say, we need to take a concerted action, and for that purpose, we need an online synthesis system and a facilitator. That is my point. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor Koike. Just a couple of points. You talked about concerted actions across the Sendai framework, the SDGs and the Paris Agreement, as APN moves into its fifth strategic phase, 2020 to 2024. This is one of our key objectives in trying to integrate all of the work between these three key frameworks. You noted that this requires online synthesis systems from a wide range of stakeholders and institutions. The science community is key in terms of collaborating with society and on-site stakeholders. But I think the really important thing that you mentioned is trust and relationships across the board, partnerships. In order to achieve great partnerships, the trust and the relationship is key. You also said that the facilitator should be fostered by the science community and is not just a master of the ceremony, but as a catalytic being. I absolutely love that. Professor Koike, thank you so much for kicking us off. And I would now like to take this opportunity to hand over the moderation to my colleague, Miss Christmas Uchiyama. Chris, it's all yours. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Linda, for that wonderful moderation of the first segment of our side event. And hello, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning to all of you today, wherever you are. And it is my great pleasure to moderate the speaker's presentation, the Q&A, panel discussion, and I'd like to guide the audience to interact with the speakers. So on behalf of APN, our co-organizers for this event, and the APAN Secretariat, thank you all for being present here today. And I would like to also give special thanks to our distinguished speakers, Mr. Takahashi, and also to our keynote speaker, Professor Koike. So what I gather from Professor Koike, and to just reiterate what Linda has said, is the importance of having consilience efforts, and also the importance of treating these people who act as a bridge between science and the community as not just the masters of ceremony, but as facilitators or catalysts of changes. So I really appreciate that, and I really appreciate, I think, all the efforts that Professor Koike's organization is doing when it comes to connecting people and to interlink Sendai Framework, the SDGs, and the Paris Agreement. Also, I'd like to acknowledge and appreciate the support from the Ministry of Environment of Japan, and for their strong commitment for making climate adaptation information and knowledge accessible to all, especially to all the most vulnerable people. And now, before we just move on to our speaker's presentation, a couple of things to keep in mind. First, you can ask questions throughout our session. So please feel free to submit your question to our Q&A function, and we will attend to them towards the last parts of the session or of this side event. And also, if you have any problem when it comes to technical function of this side event, please also feel free to message us. And without further ado, I'd like now to introduce to all of you our first speaker, who will give us some background on the objectives and the expected outcome of this side event. And it is also my pleasure to welcome Mr. Genichiro Tsukada, who is the director of the APN Secretariat. And Mr. Tsukada has over 20 years of experience in the field of environmental administration, including waste management, environmental risk assessment, international cooperation, and water resource management. And that includes field assignments in Indonesia for over 3 years as an expert of the Japan International Cooperation Agency. Also, as well as in the Netherlands through the National Personnel Authority of Japan. Now, I would like to give the floor to Gensan to provide us with a framing presentation of our topic. And over to you, Gensan. Thank you.
Okay, distinguished speakers and panelists, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Genichiro Tsukada. I'm director of the Secretariat of APN. I'd like to take this opportunity to express my sincere appreciation again and for your attending this side event today. So let me make a brief introduction of framing background to the discussion and objectives of the event. Let me share the screen. As you are aware, climate information is generated by various global, regional, and national stakeholders. We know the current data and science are available, but there is a challenge here. How can it be reconciled, disseminated, and applied for better resilience building? Needless to say, scientific knowledge, data, and technology and innovation must be well coordinated to effectively guide risk reduction and adaptation efforts. Mechanisms and partnerships that promote and bring about data uptake and harmonization should be well linked and reconciled. The figure in this slide is from the IPCC Data Distribution Center and visualizes the 30-year climatology from 1961 to 1990. This is an example of past data available and compiled online, which can help in projecting future scenarios. Also, as this is a global image, further work will be required for data to be downscaled or localized. In this IPCC portal, there are available visualization of future scenarios and models provided by various producers. But how can we link these resources and feed to the local level practitioners and decision makers? In addition, I would like to point out that there are two critical challenges. The divide between providers and end users is widening, and we often have experiences that information doesn't reach the target users. Keeping these challenges in mind, let me move on to the session objectives at the next slide. There are 5 points for today's session objectives. Fourth, understand the urgency of making science and assessments available to all users and beneficiaries at different levels. Second, highlight the importance of contextualizing adaptation knowledge and information based on user needs and strengthening connection between providers and users. Third, discuss gaps and challenges in data generation, harmonization, and dissemination, and identify coordinated efforts that guide adaptation actions in communities and cities. Fourth, promote mechanisms that facilitate generation, harmonization, sharing, and uptake of science information from regional to national and local levels. And finally, demonstrate how adaptation practices and approaches at the ground should go hand in hand with science and assessments in order to sustain community practice and participation in reconciling issues in land, ocean, and nature. This slide shows 3 key questions to be discussed at today's event. I don't have enough time to lay out each question, but I do appreciate if all of you could keep in mind these questions, and I really hope your active participation at the event. We as APN are trying our best efforts to support the delivery of best available knowledge to practitioners and local communities through our programs and activities. I'm pleased to mention that my colleague, Mr. Xiaojun Deng, will explain this further in his intervention later. This is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much, and I look forward to our fruitful dialogue today.
Thank you very much, Ken-san, for that presentation. It's such a good way to frame our dialogue and to highlight the objectives of the key questions that we will aim to answer through this event. We are indeed really looking forward to some of the examples that our speakers here will be showing us in terms of generating, synthesizing, and disseminating information and knowledge on climate adaptation and in building resilience. And we hope to see that in the coming presentations. But what I gather from the framing presentation is that there are 2 aspects, which is how do we manage knowledge in terms of the producer side and also on the user side. Also, I gathered that we need to know on how we could integrate this different knowledge. So we need to have that sectoral approach. But throughout the last part of this side event, I hope we could talk about the barriers as well as the solutions. And we hope to learn from the examples from our experts. So to start with, I would like now to introduce Dr. Eugene Masutomi, who is a senior researcher at the Center for Climate Change Adaptation, or CCCA, is in the National Institute for Environmental Studies in Japan. This field of specialization or interest includes climate change impact and adaptation assessment on agricultural sector ranging from local to global scales. He is very much engaged in the development of the AP-PLAT, or the Asia-Pacific Platform for Climate Change Adaptation in the region. Thank you, Yuji, and over to you.
Thank you, Chris. Hi, hello everyone. My name is Eugene Masutomi from Center for Climate Change Adaptation at National Institute for Environmental Studies. And today I would like to briefly introduce AP-PLAT. And so first I explain what is AP-PLAT. AP-PLAT is a web-based information platform on climate change adaptation, focusing on Asia-Pacific region. And it was established in June 2019. And AP-PLAT mainly provides scientific data and information on climate change, including future climate projection, future climate impact, and adaptation. And the main goal of the AP-PLAT is to promote adaptive action of public people, companies, and the governments. And to promote adaptive actions, I think adaptation planning is necessary. So to support adaptation plannings, we also provide scientific information and data. And also, in addition to that, impact assessment and also adaptation assessment is necessary for the support of adaptation planning. So we also provide tool and scientific data. We provide scientific data to support impact assessment and adaptation assessment. And this picture shows the top page of AP-PLAT. And through this web page, you can get a wide range of information on adaptation, climate change adaptation. For example, you can get the information on adaptation plans for Asian Pacific countries. And also you can get several case studies, including Indonesia, Mongolia, Pacific Islands country, and the Philippines. And you also get a wide range of information from AP-PLAT website. So please visit AP-PLAT website. And today, I'm so happy to announce a new tool, new bureau of AP-PLAT, which is called CMIP-6 Bureau. And you know, CMIP-6 is the state-of-the-art climate new projection data set. For example, IPCC next assessment report AL6 is based on the CMIP-6 climate data set. And using this CMIP-6 bureau, you can get the state-of-the-art climate projection data in your town. And the main concept of this bureau is climate projection for all. And this top figure shows the map mode of this CMIP-6 bureau. And from this map mode, you can understand, you can know the, for example, temperature increase and precipitation change, and temperature increase among countries. And also you can select your country, and you can select your state or province, and also you can select your town or city. And then you can understand the temperature increase in your town, in your city. This is very important information for your adaptive action. And also bottom picture shows the time series mode of this bureau. And so from this time series mode, you can know the temperature increase trend under the several socioeconomic scenario. And also this bureau includes 10 global climate model projections. So you can compare and you can understand the difference between climate model projection. And also most important thing is you can download this data by one click in a CSV format. So you can easily access this kind of state-of-the-art climate projection data from this CMIP-6 bureau. And unfortunately, this bureau is not open now, but if you are interested in this bureau, and if you can give us feedback, and I can tell you the web address of this bureau. And summary, yes, AP-PLAT can bridge between stakeholders and scientists by providing tool or scientific information. And this is a new mathematical formula equation, and AP-PLAT is equal to stakeholder bridge scientist. This is a new mathematical operator which I invented. So, but I think bridge is a very important concept and very important word in adaptation science. And also maybe Professor Koike mentioned online synthesis system is very important. Yes, I think so. I agree with. So maybe AP-PLAT could be such an online synthesis system. So thank you for your attention. That's all.
Thank you, Yuji, for that wonderful presentation. I really like that equation at the end, and we thank you for highlighting the future prospects of regional data sharing support through AP-PLAT, and for all those possible visualizations that could make information easy to understand. I'm sure all of our participants here are interested to know more about your work and how they could acquire information through the upcoming CMIP-6 viewer from AP-PLAT. So if we could just move on to our next speaker. Our next speaker is the director of the International Project Office for CORDEX. CORDEX, which stands for Coordinated Regional Climate Downscaling Experiment, was developed in 2014 to coordinate and support the regional downscaling efforts in the World Climate Research Program community. So Dr. Irene Lake is our next presenter, and her current role includes networking, coordination, and outreach, and a large portion of capacity exchange and cooperation with the CORDEX-SEA. So she has vast experience in international projects and cooperation, like serving as a program manager for the Baltic Operational Oceanographic System Modeling Program. Now, let us all welcome Irene. Irene, thank you, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Christmas. I hope you can all hear me well and now see my screen in presentation mode. Yeah. Okay, great. No, I see Linda doing something, and I'm not sure if you mean that it's okay or if
It's okay.
It's okay. Okay, thank you. Then I'll go ahead. And thank you very much, Chris, and thanks to APN for inviting me to this event. I think this is a really important event, and I think this is a very good example of how we can work together and help bridge gaps with partnerships. So I think this is a very good initiative. And today I will talk a little bit about what CORDEX and WCRP can do. So I'm working in Sweden, as Linda said before, and as Chris also said, at the International Project Office for CORDEX. And the CORDEX vision is to advance and coordinate science and application through regional climate downscaling through global partnerships. And some of the challenges to achieve this and to achieve the vision and to be relevant to society are coming up, and these might be smaller domains to actually do downscaling on small domains and with very high resolution. And this is in order to, I'm sorry, I have some problem with my screen, so I can't barely see my my slides myself. So, okay, so to go to the resolution where actual impact and the decisions are made, where it happens, to go to these scales where the risks are happening and where the vulnerability, impact, adaptation work is happening. So this is the challenge, to go down to this fine enough resolution and to actually answer to local problems. And we're also working towards Earth system models to take into account human actions to actually use the shared socioeconomic pathways, land use, ocean use, and to couple these different things together. And this increases the complexity and also calls for more computer capacity. So there's also some sort of waiting to be done between capacity, complexity, and exascale computing, etc., because the resources are not enough for everything. So we have to do some sort of balancing of this. And data and infrastructure is, of course, very important. And for this information to be robust and really usable, it needs to be open access. It needs to be standardized, which is something that we work a lot with in CORDEX, and it needs to be quality controlled, so you know that you actually can trust the data that you're using. And you use, of course, observations to verify data, etc. And where we try to publish all our data is an ESGF, which is Earth System Grid Federation. And there's a project ICHARM, which helps to bring a lot of the data on the ESGF. And there are also a lot of other projects, and there are nodes at various places in the world. There is a new, or rather new, node in Southeast Asia, for instance. And this is all to bring the data there, and to do this standarding, it's a community effort. So right now we're working with the second order draft of the experiment protocol for downscaling CMIP6. And here the community has been involved, so everybody has been able to comment on this, so that we actually know that people think that that we do it in the right way, and that the variables that come out are usable. And so we also have a new inventory at the CORDEX web, And there's a map there where you see the regions or the CORDEX domains where you can find data, from which you can find data. And here's an image of what you all know, what climate change or climate challenges, the reality might look like. It might be a rice field or a maize field in drought, or it could be a monsoon that floods a village. So what we can help with, and what we are actually doing here, I think, we're trying to bridge the gap between climate science and society and policymakers. So this is more or less the same equation that was showed to you before. It's just showed in a different way. And CORDEX has something called flagship pilot studies. The flagship pilot studies is supposed to be local challenges and on a scale that is relevant for local or regional societies. It's supposed to be having an end-to-end perspective so that the user is there from start to end. And it deals with things like extremes, events that have large socioeconomic impacts. And there we can help with, where will it happen? What will the intensity be? How often will it happen? Things like that are important. Could also be about water supply, or, is there a drought which affects crops or health? Will there be landslides that affects infrastructure, etc.? And these flagship pilot studies, and in a lot of things that we do in CORDEX, we try to think of the 5 Co's: co-produce, co-explore, etc., to actually involve those that will use it and need it from start to end. And this will hopefully produce truly actionable climate information. This is what we are aiming for. And to achieve this, as I said, to produce and convey understandable and usable climate information to those that need it, which are people and businesses and decision makers all over the world. We can do this through capacity exchange. And I want to underline the word exchange here, that it's not capacity building or that we bring to capacity to others, but that we really have to use local expertise and involve the people that are living there and know the situation. And we need to build partnerships. And I think we've already done a good work so far. We started with some meetings where we work together and discuss how we can work together and what platforms, etc., we can use, what are the relevant stakeholders and users, etc., in the region. And so with workshops and shared platforms and networks, I think we can come very far. And here is a good example. And finally, then I think that if we communicate and share, we will come really far, and we can do it soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Irene, for that insightful presentation. And thank you for giving us an example of those work that CORDEX is doing, especially the flagship pilot studies aimed at providing actionable climate information. And also you gave us an example of how co-producing, co-exploring, and co-designing language could be done by involving water managers, our farmers, our forest owners, and our city planners. So that's really a good example. And now at this point, please allow me to remind all our participants, the audience, to please use the Q&A function in Zoom. And please don't forget to put your name and your organization and direct your question to the speaker that you would like to hear a response from. And we will try to bring those questions to the side event, which is the panel discussion, or probably after this set of presentations. So now let's move on to our program. And I would like to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Joanna, a program officer with the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, or UNFCCC Secretariat. And she's also the lead officer for research and systematic observation, leading negotiations and optimizing or organizing also international collaborations for research and systematic observations headed or led by the Secretariat. So she's also the focal point when it comes to ocean and climate change matters. And she's doing a lot of work when it comes to UN oceans. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Joanna. Joanna, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris. Let me start by sharing my screen. So it's a pleasure to be here at this side event. Thank you very much to the organizers for inviting me. Hello to you all. I'd like to spend a few moments speaking about what I do in terms of science support, in terms of what the UNFCCC does in terms of science support, to this sort of science policy gap that we've all recognized and are all aware of. And in fact, I'd very much like to refer back to Professor Koike's presentation and officially identify myself as a catalytic being. This is what I do within the context of my work at the UNFCCC Secretariat. So it's great to be able to now officially identify myself formally as one at this side event. So I will spend, there's a lot to cover in a very short space of time, so I hope to give you some overview, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions following this. We work very much, science is really the rock upon which the UNFCCC and the Paris Agreement is founded. It's an essential part of the original convention. The Article 5 actually specifically refers to the importance of research and systematic observation of support for that science as well. The Paris Agreement is based on action based on the best available science. So the science is there, and we consider it in terms of this value chain into policy. Of course, we all know that more is needed, more observations are needed, more research is needed, but I work with these organizations at the Secretariat to bring this information to the policy process. We also know the importance of the IPCC for our work, and the AR6 is coming out very soon, and my colleague referred to the CMIP6 work. And it is a cyclical process, so it's more knowledge sharing. The information has to come from the science community to the decision makers, and the decision makers bring that information back to the science community. And that actually happens within our process under what we call the Research and Systematic Observation Agenda item. There is a subsidiary body for scientific and technological advice, and that is really where this information is shared from the scientific community at the international level with the UNFCCC process, and parties recognize their gaps and needs. And that feeds into, at different levels, it feeds, of course, into action, and it also feeds into the process itself in terms of how to advise the Paris Agreement, information about the global stocktake, and information about where the priorities are. And my colleagues at the APN know very well that we have the opportunity within the UNFCCC process itself to discuss research at what's called a research dialogue, which is an annual one in our process once a year. We also have a focus more on observation now that was recently mandated and started 2 years ago, something called the Earth Information Day, which looks more specifically about observation and data needs. And we know also, of course, the importance here of climate services. And we work very closely with all of these partners to bring the information to the process, to the decision makers, and provide a sort of identification of gaps and needs back again. The second question for this session was really the barriers and the end users and how we can strengthen the connection. And I'm sure most of you know, and we've heard about it already this week at the APAN, the importance of national adaptation plans for our process. They offer an effective approach for bringing together work under the Paris Agreement, the 2030 Agenda, the Sendai Framework, and so on. They are more than the NDCs. So the NDCs provide information under the Paris Agreement of intention by parties, and they are extremely important, of course, to identify mitigation and adaptation actions. However, the NAPs themselves are a process. They bring together information that really has a series of technical guidelines, bringing together an assessment of vulnerabilities and of priority areas that can be addressed by adaptation. So far, unfortunately, the Asia-Pacific region, only 3 have been submitted to the Secretariat. So there's a lot of work from colleagues bringing information together there. But of course, there's also gaps already identified in terms of the need to strengthen climate scenarios, science translation to the local context, strengthen capacity of national, subnational sectors and the availability of climate data, and of course, strengthen the opportunities for risk and vulnerability assessment and risk management. So this process is there. There's a lot of work going on, but you know, and we are working at the international level to facilitate this with a range of partners and organizations. So we know that the way we use land and ocean could provide solutions. So we know that nature is our friend, but there are of course unique challenges in each region. Regional brokers are particularly important for identifying and working to build this gap, and the APN is of course extremely vital in this regards. From our side, from the UNFCCC side, there's a lot of work going on to support regional capacity building. You heard earlier today in the closing adaptation knowledge gaps to scale up nature-based action in the Asia-Pacific region. That session at the APAN, which really talked about the work of the Nairobi Work Program in strengthening adaptation knowledge and adaptation, identifying gaps and addressing actions to close those gaps. So that's a lot of work on from the Secretariat side. There's also a capacity building element in the work of the UNFCCC. There are a range of regional climate weeks, and at those regional climate weeks over the last few years, there's been capacity building and knowledge to action days to try and strengthen this work as well. There are examples of action by my colleagues on the panel, and I don't need to go into more detail, but we do work very closely together to bring that information to the parties and try and identify the information coming back again in the process. So really, we are acting as a catalyst, if you like, at this higher level. So I know the UNFCCC works at the international level, but we are trying to catalyze knowledge sharing at all levels as far as possible by bringing in the partners to do that through the national adaptation planning process, which is supported by a range of work at national level, through engagement at regional level, such as through the Nairobi Work Program, through the Paris Committee on Capacity Building, and of course at international level at events and negotiations under the UNFCCC itself. So with that, I'd like to say thank you very much, and I pass back to Chris.
Thanks, Joanna, for the presentation about the role of UNFCCC, excuse me, in disseminating science information. And what I learned is the UNFCCC is acting as a mediator or as an information broker, and who tries to connect the international requirements with the national agenda or the national plans. So for example, in case of meeting the targets of the Paris Agreement, the work of the UNFCCC is to support by giving information to the countries so that countries can easily provide for their targets and their plans, their national adaptation plans. So thank you very much for that message. And I think in the panel discussion, we can still expound on the examples that Joanna has provided us. Now, on to our next speaker. Let me please introduce Professor Fredolin Tangang, who is the Professor of Climatology and Oceanography at the Department of Earth Sciences and Environment, Faculty of Science and Technology of the National University of Malaysia. Professor Tangang has been with the university for 34 years with research focused on climate change and climate variability over the Southeast Asia region. And he served as the Vice Chair of the Working Group 1 of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change for the 5th Assessment Cycle. And now currently he's serving as a member of the advisory team of CORDEX and is the leader of the CORDEX Southeast Asia. It is indeed my pleasure to now give the floor to you, Professor Tangang. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here. Let me share my screen. Okay, I think I have it in one presentation now. Yeah, Again, my name is Fredolin Tangang. I'm a professor at National University Malaysia. I'm also affiliated with the Ramkambing University in Bangkok. You heard earlier Dr. Irene Lake explaining about CORDEX. So I think my job is a little bit easier. This is one domain, one of the 14 domain that we have in CORDEX. This is a CORDEX in Southeast Asia. What we have done in Southeast Asia basically to realize the vision and objective of CORDEX. So the next 4 or 5 minutes I will be describing this. What I have here is the glimpses or images of disaster in Southeast Asia region, which I gathered from various sites on the internet. As you know, Southeast Asia is a vulnerable region, exposed region, and for the last 2 decades, there has been a steady increase in the number of disasters, climate-related disasters in this region, with significant economic losses. But what worrying countries in the region is that latest scientific evidence shows that as climate warms, weather and climate extremes in these regions are projected to increase and intensify. And hence, to increase resilience, countries in the region need to adapt and also to embrace sustainability. And to do that, we need to have the right policy, the right action to enable adaptation. But policy in action requires a few steps before reaching that stage, where you cannot have a policy unless you understand the problem, you assess the risk, impacts, and this is where you need future climate information, usually at the regional and also local scale. And it begins with climate modeling. Climate communities like myself, have rules, but we cannot do everything. We have to, what's the word here? Partner with other community, other scientific community. In this particular case, when it comes to assessing the impact, we need community, scientific community from BIA, the vulnerability impact assessment and adaptation, to complete the chain of action here. And so every stage is important. And when it comes to the climate modeling, usually climate information is produced using so-called global climate model, which operate at a global scale. But the problem, the challenges with this, of course, or the gaps associated with this, is that it operates on the rather large coastal, grids, as you can see here. For Southeast Asia, it doesn't resolve very well. This is one typical model. If you look at the land here, as opposed to what's on the right here, which is if we use the regional climate model. And this is why it is important to refine the information from the global model using a regional climate model. And this process what we call as regional climate downscaling. However, to ensure that the projection is robust, it cannot depends on one particular GCM, one particular RCM, but what needed basically a good ensemble and a good samples of many models and many GCM and many RCM to produce some kind of ranges, estimate of uncertainty that perhaps needed when you want to assess the impact. And with many models, with many GCM, many RCM, this is quite a challenge. Regional climate downscaling is of course time consuming and is very expensive to implement. And for Southeast Asia region, where most countries are developing and least developed. This is just beyond the the ability to produce on your own, and this is why collaboration is important. And this is one of the objective of CORDEX, as been described by Dr. Irene earlier, that to provide a platform for communities, institutions, or even countries to work together. And we demonstrated this well in this region, where we established a domain, a CORDEX domain. Initially, we called this SEACLID because it was just part of project under APN, funded by APN. But at the later stage, it was streamlined into CORDEX and become the 40th domain of CORDEX. And many institutions involved around the world, not just within the region, but around the world. We have scientists from Australia, from CSIRO. I saw John McGregor earlier in the audience. We have institutions from the Europe, from Japan, around the world, basically, in producing the running the models and downscaling it. And for the phase one, which is we downscale from GCM to 25 kilometer, we had 11 GCM and 7 RCM, and this is actually a very, very good, reasonable numbers to provide a robust, a projection in the regional and local scale. And out of this, we actually managed to enhance our scientific understanding of the physical aspect of climate over this region, how climate will be changing in decades to come. And more importantly, basically, we produce this data, and we have established a data portal. We call this the Southeast Asia Regional Climate Change Information System, or SACCIS, which is one of the node in the so-called ESGF, as mentioned by Irene. This facilitated the dissemination of the data, and have been used by BIA communities in agriculture, in hydrology modeling, and so on. And it's also used by a number of countries in their national assessment. And it is also currently used by the IPCC in producing the regional atlas for the AR6 coming AR6 report. We are currently actually completing a second phase of the project, where we downscale even further into 5 kilometer into a basin scale. So SACCIS, as I mentioned, actually play a very important critical roles. This is one of the nodes in ESGF. In fact, in the Southeast Asia, the only nodes, as compared to like many in the US and many in Europe. And we think that this is really an achievement when it comes to CORDEX Southeast Asia, which facilitate in terms of how do you deliver the data to the user. But not this portal is not just delivering the data, but we're in the process of actually putting additional added values into this portal, where user can plot, can do analysis, and in fact we do have the case study being documented in this data portal. So again, I think this requires partnership in terms of the roles of this. I think this is very important in enabling, enhancing the knowledge, enabling the adaptation, the prevention of disasters, and so on. So I have been fortunate enough to work with many scientists from this region, from outside the region, around the world. Without them, I think this is not possible. And CORDEX actually really a right platform. And we are continuing this effort. And the next thing that we do will be to downscale the CMIP6, as mentioned by Irene. take. I just want to mention here that we lost one of our colleagues last week, Dr. Gemma Narisma, and I would like to take this brief moment to acknowledge her very significant contribution in CORDEX Southeast Asia, and for that, we would like to dedicate SEACLID CORDEX Southeast Asia in memory of her, Dr. Gemma Narisma of Manila Observatory of the Philippines. Thank you so much. This is the end of my talk.
Thanks, Professor Tangang, for that presentation. And I'd like to express my apology. I'm really sorry to hear about the passing of Dr. Narisma. We may never have a direct interaction with her, but I know she has contributed a lot to CORDEX and SEACLID network. So yeah, for that, thank you very much for sharing that experience. And also thank you for the comprehensive example of work you're doing. You've presented that there is robust information already out there, and that we could do continue these efforts to increase sharing support services and to increase all this information that can enable actions, can prevent disasters, and can make the knowledge on the vulnerability impacts and adaptation visible, not only to the research community, but also most importantly to the local communities. So just before we move on, I would like to say that I'm seeing some questions from all of you now. And I just want to encourage you to continue that conversation. And I urge the speakers to at least respond to Q&A in our Q&A function. And we hope to address them at the end of our segment. And to move on to our next presentation, I'd like to now call on to Mr. Xiaojun Deng, who is my colleague, and he is the Deputy Head for Knowledge Management of APN Secretariat. And Xiaojun is responsible for managing and monitoring and promoting knowledge generated from APN activities across the Asia-Pacific region. And he also coordinates the APN Science Bulletin, which is a flagship web-based peer-reviewed publication published by APN since 2011. He is a firm believer of open, tailored, science-based knowledge that is backed by information technology in advancing efforts towards sustainability. So Xiaojun, the floor is now yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. Just to begin with, I really appreciate this opportunity and really honored. It is really honored for me to join the distinguished speakers in this discussion, and I really look forward to a very interactive discussion with all of you. Yeah, I would like to share a little bit of what APN is doing in terms of, especially in terms of knowledge management, knowledge sharing, and hopefully this could lead to some further discussion on how as a regional network, or how we can cooperate as partners, especially as APN enters into its new fiscal, new strategic phase. So very quickly, I would like to share some results from some findings from our 4th strategic phase report, which covers the period of 2015 to 2020. And yeah, I think the key message from this slide is really that the activities that APN supports and APN conducts really covers a wide, very wide spectrum of thematic areas under the big umbrella of global change. And of course, the outputs, the knowledge products are also varies has a vast diversity. And as you can see from the graph, from the chart on the left side, we do have very different types of publications. And when it comes to the most downloaded or most used publications or knowledge products, we noticed that those practical or action-oriented synthesized information receives much more public attention compared to other types. And also, one interesting point is that actually it doesn't matter when the publication is published. And some quality publications, then they stand the test of time, and they can date like decades ago. So that is an example. One of the example is that one publication was published in 2001. That is right into the first 5th year of APN's existence. So as the last point on this slide, I wanted to also emphasize. I think I just saw the intervention from Koike, Professor Koike, that information in local language is also something that we might want to pay more attention to as regional or networks working at a regional level. So especially those that are useful for decision-making and practitioners. So one example here is the guidance for urban waste management, and those that publication is written in both Khmer and Vietnamese, and they also stand out in the top downloads of our analysis. So moving on to the next slide, that's a lot of information. It's not my intention to show you all these, so the details of these, but the point here is that one way that we contribute to policymaking is really through our projects going up to the, for example, the global assessments. So this is an example of how we are contributing our knowledge products into the IPCC 5th assessment and some special reports. So as you can see here, our focus really is, there's a big focus on impact, adaptation, and vulnerability. And also from the analysis, you can really see that adaptation stands out. And also there's a big like emphasis on the regional perspective, like Asia, the Pacific region, small island countries. And of course, there's a big, when we talk about adaptation, there is always a huge emphasis on a human factor. So that is one example of how APN activities are contributing to decision-making, policy-making through the international processes. So just going back one step, and when we talk about knowledge sharing or closing the gap, I think there is really a big spectrum or a huge dimension of audience, for example, and also the producers of the knowledge is also very different. You have people from various disciplines, and as you hear from our speakers today, we have initiative that produced the groundwork, the pillars for other researchers to build on. So I think we need to, when we talk about this, we really need to think about what is the information for, and then who do we target, and then we can start to think about what really is the right format or form or type of information that we want to produce. So just wanted to highlight a couple of examples from APN. So of course, for policy planning, one example is the slide I just shared. And of course, we also have direct contribution from our projects into the policy planning processes. And we also hold dialogues between science and science community and policymakers. And for those who are new to APN, we are a network of governments and researchers. So I think we are really well positioned in connecting the two communities and understanding their needs, and then providing the information that are useful for each community. So without going through every example here, I really want to highlight one recent example that is more focusing on the practitioner or knowledge generation community, for example. So the project is about adaptation communication framework that mainstreams the indigenous and local knowledge for Hindu Kush Himalayan region. So the output of this project, or the main outcome of this project, is to create a communication framework that is aimed for assisting countries in the region, or in the HKH region, to fulfill their reporting obligations under the Paris Agreement framework. So I think this kind of products are also very, very useful for all of our member countries, not only in the region but across the board in terms of ILK. So these are the examples that that we could explore further in the discussion session. And just very quickly, some ideas that what we can do as a network, or as a knowledge sharer, or even promoter or broker. So first of all, of course, we have a big role to play in preserving those data. And here, I think we are really relying on the infrastructure and and the capabilities as from our partners, as we heard just before me. So, but in terms of data, I think APN could also play a role in providing the metadata, or generating all the basically just pointing to where the data is. So, and that needs to be meaningfully organized, and they need to be searchable, easily located, easily identifiable, and it has to be permanent. So I wanted to just emphasize that, just to thank actually for the donor countries of APN here, because it is only with this long-term investment or long-term support by the donor countries of APN that we can really start to curate and then to preserve all the outputs generated from the publication, or generated from projects into all this information that spanning across 25 years of APN's existence. And of course, we also have a role in sharing, synthesizing the information, and of course monitoring is also important, because we really want to understand what is the reach and what is the uptake, and ultimately what is the impact of our of the knowledge products generated by our projects and activities. And again, I think I'm just echoing many speakers here that it is important that it's not just one actor that is doing all the work, and also it is maybe not realistic, but what we really need is to cooperate. And I really want to highlight that it's not just the producers, but also users. So for example, we want to understand what our member countries need when they do the decision making, and also if we could involve communicators, even storytellers, and those people into the process, maybe early in the process, then we really can generate a bigger impact into different groups of audience that we are aiming to reach. And finally, to close my presentation, I just wanted to share with everyone that APN is entering its 5th strategic plan, which spans from 2020 to 2024. And of course, in the plan, we have clearly mentioned that the 5 pillars of our activity: research capacity development, science policy interactions, community engagement, and also operational reform. And so I just wanted to focus on the research and communication and community engagement part here, because we have clearly identified our partners such as WCRP-CORDEX, AP-PLAT, and other like-minded organizations, and into our and we hope that we can have new research initiatives with those organizations. And we also wanted to advance our work in circular ecological economy, and also synthesis activity is also one big area of our work. And of course, we will continue our contribution to the international global processes such as UNFCCC, IPCC, and IPBES. And then there's also an emphasis on the new on a region, especially the Pacific region, in our strategic plan, which is, of course, giving more importance to the, I would say, the areas more hard hit by the climate disaster. So, of course, to support these activities, we are really emphasizing the importance of communication, dissemination, and outreach, and monitoring and evaluation is really important part to make this happen. So I really want to, before I close, I would just wanted to call on not only the organizations, but all participants in the audience, and we really welcome you to join our effort in thinking, or in as Professor Koike said, in framing, determining the problem set, and then develop a systematic way to really create impact by sharing knowledge. And my inspiration statement is maybe quite familiar to many of you who are from the academic community, because it's more related to open access, which is really a completely different topic that cannot be touched, cannot be discussed fully today. But I think it's applicable to the other areas, not only the scholastic publication field. So knowledge is non-rivalrous. So let us share it without dividing it, and consume it without diminishing it. Thank you very much, and look forward to more discussion in the coming session. Thank you.
Thank you, Xiaojun, for that insightful and interesting perspective. Just a little bit of housekeeping. We are behind schedule, but yeah, we have the liberty or the freedom to extend a little bit. I really thank all the engagements from all of you, all the questions. Please keep them coming. But at this point, I'd like to invite everyone to please visit www.menti.com, www.menti.com, and please type in the key code 99762590. So that's www.menti.com, and the key code is 99762590. So this is just a little bit of getting your insights and inputs, and we like to bring them into the panel discussion later on. So if you are ready, I will now flash the screen. First question is, what do you think is the most common challenge in knowledge creation and dissemination that prevents scaling up of adaptation solutions? So we'd like to hear from you, and if you could answer or pick your choice from the set of options out there. Now I see that a lot of you are angling towards lack of translation of data, knowledge, and information into decision making. Some are saying it's because of insufficient resources and tools. And some are also saying it's because of coordination problems among relevant actors. Now I see that there's about 18 participants who have contributed to answering this question, now coming up to 20. And we have also some people here, a little bit of percentage saying it's because of inadequate data, knowledge, and information. So please keep them coming, and that's really a diverse set of responses from all of you. Thank you very much. Now, moving on to the next question. In 1 to 2 words, tell us one key barrier that limit end users' access to climate knowledge and information. Just 1 to 2 words, what is one key barrier that limit end users' access to climate knowledge and information? Yeah, that's really nice, very good. Language barrier, data format. Now I see software availability. That's really an interesting perspective. Multiple formats, yeah, we've mentioned that. We have here tool, technical knowledge, terminology, issue, and the issue of less sharing. Anyone else? Please keep them coming. I see some, okay, we have 14 responses now, and that includes people who are saying it's because of technology, and language barrier, software availability, trust, that's another aspect of it, and as well as resources. Education, yeah, very good. Thank you very much for that. Now I'd like to move on to the next Mentimeter slide. Oh, just a moment. But yeah, thank you very much for answering. And it's basically dominantly because of language. If I could just move on to the next slide. Okay. In your opinion, which role of partnerships should be prioritized to support access and use of climate knowledge and information? Please keep your answers coming. Okay, open data sharing is now the most dominant response. We have here through peer-to-peer learning and capacity building. We have here linking knowledge producers or carriers, brokers, and end users. And one aspect on increasing networking, participation, and engagement. So those are your opinions on how or which role of partnerships should be prioritized. That's really important for us to know, and thank you very much. Please keep your answers coming. I see that the last point of our speaker on having information being readily available and openly available is like the most top answer here. Thank you very much. Now I'll stop the screen sharing now. And I really thank you for all the interaction, for all those responses. But we need to move on to our panel discussion. So I combined the Q&A and the panel discussion now. And may I invite all our speakers, panelists, and joined by Professor Koike to please open your camera. Thank you. Thank you very much. So let's do a little bit of discussion here, and I thank you again for all the key messages you've given us, all your interventions. And I see that some of you have already answered or responded to the questions of the audience. Thank you for that. But to kick things off, I like to ask my own question, and that would be to pose a question to Professor Koike. And my question is the current climate data, information, and knowledge enough and effective in delivering information leading to policy and adaptation actions? If no, how can we make it effective? And if yes, could you give an example, a precise example or best practice wherein climate information has supported policy planning or decision making? Mm-hmm. If you could just answer that quickly, we'd really appreciate it.
Okay, very quickly, by using the ensemble climate prediction out of the D4 PDF we showed, our ministry land infrastructure transport tourism to that ministry. We submit the report on river basin disaster resilience sustainability by all, and after that the cabinet approved the special budget, the 140 billion US dollar for the next 5 years, and amendment of 9 related act, which are now under discussion at the National Diet. So I think the trustful the information is very useful for decision making. So we have been working, but this by making this report, the way what they say integrate our knowledge and then pass the report to the government. So this is one of the very important approach. That IPCC, UNFCCC. So you are doing that. I'm also joining the IPCC, and this is a very, very important process. Thank you very much.
Professor Koike, may I just hand over the question, the same question to Professor Tangang, if you could please give your opinion on that. So my question is, whether if the information has been effective to be able to deliver to the community and to model some adaptation actions. If it's effective, then could you please give us an example of best practice in the ground that has been used, and information has been used to support policy planning or decision making?
It can be a very difficult question. In theory, it shouldn't be a problem. The information from climate model, into a different user and in the end, in the policy decision process and so on, it should be, in theory, I think should be no problem. But in the real world, it can be a challenge. You can have like two group of, like a chicken talking to the duck. Which communication might not be that easy. This is a challenge for us, even at the CORDEX South Asia level, where we build up a data center, we build up, and we don't know how effective is this in terms of, for example, how this data from the model, the projected future climate information at the regional as well as local scale can influence the decision-making process at the very end. So of course, for climatologists like us, when we write papers and so on, we always viewed as whatever we write inside the paper, always viewed as is difficult to understand by policymakers. But I would say when it comes to the major messages that can be understood by policymakers and can become the actionable items at the very end, I think down the road there has to be another, what is the word, Professor Keiko mentioned earlier, someone that can deliver this message. For us, climate model perhaps is rather difficult for us, to go down, that level to influence the policymakers.
Thank you, Professor Tangang. Yeah, you've mentioned and emphasized that there's two aspects: the problem with the users and how the information can be reached, effectively reaching them, and the problem on how providers can effectively communicate it. So I guess that's where the role of science communicators are needed, and the role is to fill the gap, the widening gap between the community and the policymakers. So may I address my next question to Yuji? If you could just share, based from your experience, how can we fill that widening gap between providers and users of data and information, and how we could introduce new information to those who do not have access to it? Yeah,
I think
thank you.
In the Menti.com, I think some people raise the problem, the language and data format. I think that is a big problem. So I think because the AP-PLAT is for the public people, the target of AP-PLAT is public people, and including Asia Pacific region. So but public people cannot read English, and they can read only their own language. So I think we should consider that a wide range of language, so we should respond to their needs for regarding language. And also data format is, I think, important because the public people cannot deal with the net CDF data. The climate scientists can easily handle with the CDF, but so AP-PLAT in the new tool CMIP6 bureaus, I think we will provide the data in a CSV format, right? So I think most students, most people can handle with a CSV format and then analyze the data and view. So I think so what I learned, two important things from this workshops as data format and also language is very important. That's thing. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Yuji. So just to mention here, a question from one of our participants, from Binaya from ICHES, and he basically echoed my question a little while ago, and he said how we could communicate downscaled results to community. Are there any specific efforts being taken in that direction? And with regards to this, I'd like to ask Irene to share some examples of the work that your organization is doing. You could do that, thank you.
Yes, I put an answer there in the chat, and I think one of the things that we do to reach out is, I mean, of course, to attend events like this, to actually build partnerships to to local organizations that are out there and know which ones to invite, etc. And we do it through our webs, of course, and we do it a lot through training workshops as well. Fredolin, for instance, there's been a lot of training workshops in the Southeast Asia domain, where both, I mean, stakeholders and non-governmental organizations and universities, etc., are invited, and we try to also invite early career scientists and also to be more involved social scientists, to involve the impact people, where we've done in Africa. We've had workshops where there are people from the energy sector, etc., invited, from people working with health issues, from people working with crops, etc. So that we're actually working with those that are supposed to implement the information that we have. And we work a lot with open access, and also, like people said before here, with the language. I once heard the Finnish environmental minister say that, please remember that we know very little about very much. So you have to speak to us in a very simple way. And I think that goes for a lot of our users, that we tend to use a language that is difficult. So to speak in a very simple way and to present our information in a very simple way, I think that's key. And we work a lot with that. And I also wrote in the chat that we have some projects in Sweden, for instance, where we work with indigenous people to make sure that we are actually giving information that is what they need, and in a way that they understand it. It might not be that there is new information needed, but it may be presented, has to be presented maybe in another way. And to synthesize data, to distill data or information, because there's also so many things out there, so it might be very difficult for the user to decide what to use. So I think that's also a very important information, that for this kind of use, this is what is most adequate of what we have. I think that kind of help is needed as well, to direct or guide towards the best available information for a specific use. I think that's also something we need to work with. So I think we're trying to work with this a lot, but there's still also, I want to say that there's also some scientists that are a bit, awkward towards actually reaching out to users, that want to focus on the science. And of course we need that too, but we need to be the ones, I think, here bridging that gap, as people said before. I hope that was somewhat an answer.
Yeah, that's amazing response to the question. Thank you very much, Irene. And I think you emphasize also the importance of indigenous and local knowledge, because they're also a source of data. They're also producers of knowledge. And that, I think, should be really considered in the equation. But just to move on a little bit on the discussion, I want to now put a different light into the issue. And this is giving more importance or more emphasis on the importance of knowledge brokers. So if I could ask Joanna on your view on how can we avoid talking into our own little silos and introducing interventions in bubbles. If you could just give your thoughts on that, how we could avoid that as a knowledge broker. Thank you.
We've actually, it's just a personal thought on this one also, and I think all of us have been living in the Zoom world for the last year and have experience of this. When we meet online like this, there is a huge opportunity to meet people that we don't normally talk to. But I think a lot of us still talk to the same people. So we should really be thinking about and talking to people outside of, you know, our usual box, to put it bluntly, because this is how we're going to solve some of these massive problems that we're all dealing with in the face of climate change, sustainable development, you know, increasing risks and so on. So I guess my reflection has got 3 points. One is ultimately, and I saw there was a lot of academics on the line, and I am a former academic myself. Science needs to change how it works. A lot of peer-reviewed science, of course, is extremely important, and I'm not saying that itself should change, but actually the funders of science and the funders of those people that are funding scientific projects need to recognize that from the beginning onwards, there needs to be a knowledge sharing element where the scientists can actually speak to those people that are going to be impacted by that scientific knowledge and work together, so that there's some element of engagement. The second point is really there's lots of data. We're getting a lot of data, a lot of information. People like Dr. Lake just said, you know, that people know a little about a lot, and you see that reflected on social media a lot and other places. So as observations, as research provides increasing amounts of data, of information, as we know we need to coordinate with those people who can provide even more knowledge and information, that we need to make use of the technologies that are becoming available, as Dr. Masutomi just mentioned, to bring this information together and then package it appropriately. So for example, countries that are putting together their national adaptation plans, they need information about their country. So where can they go to get that? Is there a way that we can provide a basic source of information, observations, projections, and so on, that they can start from and then build according to their priorities? And then the first one is really that we are increasingly needing to use data in different ways. I think 10, 20 years ago, people said, where can I find this information, went to find it, and then made the decisions from that. That's not possible anymore, and it's going to be getting even more impossible as we move forward. And we're constantly barraged with all of this information. So we need to use technology to form products that help us. So it's a new way of working that we're all trying to move forward. I think it's quite exciting. I think observation is going to be able to help us a huge amount in the future. There's technological innovation going on that can help countries, that can bring people together, that can interpret the information without you going, you know, to an interpreter, but can use online tools. So all of this technology is available, but we need to, you know, bring these sort of thoughts into a framework together to move us forward. And I think that's quite exciting, but it's a new way of thinking for many of us of the older generations. I think the younger ones have probably got a better take on how that's possible, and we need to start thinking about bringing those into these sort of those people into this sort of conversation as well.
Thanks, Joanna, for that resounding message. Now, to forward our discussion, maybe if I could just ask one question to our panelist, Mr. Xiaojun Deng. The question is about, you know, the critical nature of how information should be translated into action, or how it should be disseminated as timely as possible. So could you please tell us your thoughts on how information can be disseminated in as timely as possible to the end users or to our, you know, the target beneficiaries? So thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. And really, I just maybe I'm just summarizing all the fantastic points that I get from all the panelists here today. And one thing I really wanted to echo is that for knowledge data, there are plenty of knowledge and plenty of data available. And then especially for the academic community, I really don't think it is, so difficult to find data generated from. I think as many participants would, I hope would agree with me, it is when we talk about data, we would climate simulation data, we go for CORDEX and things like that. I think there's not a big problem, especially as the technology, as Dr. Post mentioned, is advancing, and we are promoting open science, open data, and these data are readily available and easily accessible by academic community. But what we really need is to think about how to go one step further and then and take this information into a format or a content that is readily digestible, easily understandable by the users. So I think these are maybe the recurring themes or takeaway messages. So from my side, I really want to again emphasize that we really need to first of all understand the diversity of not only the producers from different disciplines, but also the users from different walks of life and different decision-making levels, for example. And then can we really start to think about what kind of content or what kind of knowledge product is the right way to get people engaged. So I really wanted to emphasize that as a network, for example, APN, we could have the role of providing digital infrastructure, for example, to promote the access to searchability and also the preservation of information. And we also can, as a funder or network, we can provide the support for capacity development in producing or in promoting this kind of co-design, co-produce, as I would echo Dr. Lake, to co-produce, co-design, maybe just from the beginning of the project, of the activity. And I would really like to call on not only the partners in this panel, but also all the participants that is listening in. Please join us and let's think about how we can work together better and fulfilling the objective of making the data more accessible, information more accessible. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Deng. That's really well noted and very much taken. And now I'd like to thank all our panelists. We move on to the last segment, which is Mentimeter again. And may I invite all participants to please go to www.menti.com and again key in our passcode. And the passcode is, give me a moment. So that's 9976-2590. All right. So I have here the first question, which is, in your opinion, oh, sorry, not about that. I'm very sorry. I think I'd like to get your last thought on this, because we had this question at the beginning of our side event. So I want you to please again recall. I'm sorry about that. So this is the correct one. So I want you to please recall whether you agree or disagree whether partnerships help in effectively harmonizing scientific information and knowledge to enable adaptation. I see here a resounding 21 responses who did say yes, strongly agree, and 7 agree. Thank you very much for that. That's really fantastic. And I hope this session has helped get that message across. Then this one is a question about what are your considerations in sustaining adaptation partnerships. So here we saw collaboration, common platform, knowledge sharing, encouraging community, and institutional arrangements. That's really important. Also linkages among stakeholders and capacity building, which has been reiterated very strongly in our side event. We have here open access, also sharing knowledge and co-producing. So thank you for that. Thank you very much. Now moving on. we have here the last Mentimeter slide, or may I say second to the last, because we're interested to know in which field you would like to use the information you gathered in this side event. So you've mentioned here education, agriculture, research, energy, ecosystem, biodiversity, and that's basically a lot on education. We need those information about a lot of downscaled scenarios on vulnerability, impacts, and assessment. We need them to be educated to the general public and to the local community. Now, moving on, if I could just move on to our last or final question for the Mentimeter, which is, what is your takeaway message from this side event? So I really, really appreciate all the responses from all of you, from all the participants. And that would really be, we would like to share this report, share a report of this event to all of you. This will help us to continue to connect to each other and continue to know what are still needed to be strengthened in connecting the information producers with the information users, and how we could build new frameworks that can be used by our information and knowledge brokers in the region. So thank you very much for that. I'd like to summarize the event. And may I just say that based on the discussion, we have really had the strong message that partnerships help in effectively harmonizing scientific information and knowledge to enable adaptation, and as well as to strengthen resilience or build resilience. Also, we have here that partnerships and mechanisms bring about harmonization and policy uptake, as you have said in the examples of our speakers. It leads to an uptake, and that to some extent. However, we need to reconcile the interlinkages. We need to have this conversation to not only be in our circle, but we need to extend it to the local communities and to the other representations from other sectors. Also, we have here that we discuss a lot of types of examples on how to link producers, practitioners, and end users. However, in linking this group of people together, we have issues when it comes to data format. We have issues when it comes to institutional establishments and institutional arrangements, and that we need to have more efforts on. Now, I like to give my special thanks to all of you, and to all, most especially to the speakers and panelists, to APAN Secretariat for giving us the space, and to all our co-organizers of this side event. Thank you everyone who contributed in our dialogue today. Thanks also very much to the Ministry of Environment of Japan and to UNEP, who co-organized the 7th APAN Forum. So we really, really appreciate and we enjoyed this side event today. Thank you very much for all the active participation. And we will send you the report after this event. Thank you very much and stay safe, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, dear speakers and participants, for your active participation in today's side event. We will close the webinar in a minute. We encourage you to check out APN sessions, other APN sessions, and join the discussion on Hubilo or Twitter using the hashtag APAN2020. Thank you again for joining us. Have a good day and a wonderful evening.